Welcome to our deep dive into Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, God, classic.
Yeah, we're going to be like unpacking his advice for building better relationships. And it's pretty amazing how relevant his ideas still are, like even decades later.
Absolutely. I mean, Carnegie really tapped into some like fundamental truths about human nature.
Yeah.
Our desire to feel important, understood, and appreciated. And his principles offer a practical roadmap for navigating those complexities.
Exactly. It's not just about like winning friends, right?
Right.
It's about connecting with people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And creating like more fulfilling relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we even begin with all this wisdom?
Well, Carnegie starts by emphasizing the power of genuine interest in others.
Okay.
It sounds simple,
Yeah.
but it's actually like a profound shift in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of trying to make people interested in us,
Mm-hmm.
we should focus on being genuinely interested in them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what's the psychology behind it? Why does it work so well?
Well, it taps into the principle of reciprocity.
Okay.
When we show genuine interest in someone,
Yeah.
they're more likely to feel obligated to reciprocate that interest.
Okay.
It also validates them,
Mhm.
makes them feel like their thoughts and feelings matter.
So it's not just about like asking superficial questions, right?
Right.
It's about actively listening
Yeah.
and engaging with what the other person is saying.
Precisely. Carnegie even shares this charming anecdote about his dog, Tippy, who was a natural at making friends. Tippy didn't worry about impressing anyone. He was just genuinely curious about everyone he met.
Yeah.
He'd wag his tail, lick faces, the whole 9 yards.
I love that image.
Yeah.
And it highlights the difference between like genuine interest
Mhm.
and forced attention.
Exactly. Carnegie contrasts Tippy's approach with the common mistake of trying to dominate conversations
Mhm.
or brag about our accomplishments.
Yeah.
That kind of behavior actually pushes people away because it makes them feel unimportant.
So even someone like Theodore Roosevelt, right?
Yeah.
Who was like a powerful and influential figure,
Mm-hmm.
understood the importance of showing genuine interest in others.
Absolutely. Roosevelt was famous for connecting with people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
He'd remember small details about people he'd only met briefly,
Oh,
making
wow.
them feel valued.
Okay.
There's a story about him talking to a young girl about a specific type of bird.
Okay.
I think it was a bobwhite.
Okay.
And he remembered details about its habitat and behavior.
Wow.
Showing a level of interest that went beyond mere politeness.
It's like remembering someone's favorite coffee order
Exactly.
or a detail about their family.
Yeah.
It shows you're paying attention,
Mm.
that you value them as an individual.
And that kind of thoughtfulness can go a long way in building strong relationships.
Speaking of remembering details, what about remembering names?
Yeah.
I've always struggled with that.
Carnegie actually devotes a whole chapter to the importance of remembering names.
Okay.
He argues that it's one of the simplest yet most powerful ways to make someone feel important.
Okay. I'm all ears.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it have such a profound impact?
Well, our names are deeply tied to our sense of identity.
Okay.
When someone remembers our name,
Yeah.
it validates us, makes us feel seen and acknowledged.
Right.
Carnegie even points out that even notorious figures like Al Capone
Yeah.
craved that feeling of importance.
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
There's a great story about Jim Farley,
Okay.
a successful politician
Mm-hmm.
who could reportedly call 50,000 people by their first names.
Wow. That's incredible. I can barely remember the names of people I met 5 minutes ago. Do you think that ability contributed to his success?
Absolutely. It showed people that he valued them, that he
Yeah.
cared enough to remember their names, and built trust and rapport.
So remembering names isn't just about good manners.
Right.
It's about making a genuine connection with someone.
Exactly. And it's a skill that can be developed with practice.
Oh, right.
Carnegie offers some practical tips,
Okay.
like repeating the person's name several times during the conversation
Mm-hmm.
and associating it with a visual image.
Okay.
He even mentions Andrew Carnegie.
The steel magnate.
Yeah, the steel magnate who
Okay.
took it to the extreme.
Okay.
He'd name steel mills and even rabbits after his friends and associates.
Talk about making someone feel special. Okay, so we've got genuine interest
Mhm.
and remembering names.
Yeah.
What's next in Carnegie's arsenal of relationship building tools?
Well, becoming a good conversationalist.
Okay.
But here's the surprising twist.
Okay.
Carnegie believes that being a good conversationalist often comes down to being a good listener.
Wait, really? I always thought being a good conversationalist meant being witty and charming and having a lot to say.
Well, there's this funny anecdote about this.
Okay.
Carnegie was considered a great conversationalist. But he admits that one of his most successful conversations involved him barely saying a word.
Oh, wow.
He was at a dinner party and ended up sitting next to a botanist.
Okay.
He knew nothing about plants.
Yeah.
So he simply encouraged the botanist to talk about his work.
And I'm guessing the botanist walked away thinking Carnegie was the most fascinating person he'd ever met.
Exactly. He felt heard, understood, and appreciated.
Yeah.
And that's the key to good listening.
Okay.
It's not about staying silent. It's about actively engaging with what the other person is saying, asking thoughtful questions, and showing that you're truly absorbing their words.
So it's about creating a space where the other person feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Without feeling judged or interrupted.
Precisely. It's about creating a sense of psychological safety.
Okay.
Carnegie even compares good listening to the concentrated attention that Sigmund Freud was famous for.
Wow. I never realized how much skill and intention goes into being a good listener.
Yeah.
So if being a good listener is so crucial for building relationships, what does Carnegie say about criticism? Is it ever a good idea?
That's where Carnegie gets really provocative.
Okay.
He argues that criticism is rarely effective and often counterproductive.
Really? But sometimes people need to be told when they're doing something wrong.
Carnegie acknowledges that.
Yeah.
But he points out that even hardened criminals like Two Gun Crowley,
Who's that?
a notorious gangster in the 1930s, refused to blame themselves for their actions.
So even people who've done terrible things have a hard time accepting criticism.
Exactly. It triggers defensiveness and resentment,
Right.
making it very difficult to actually change someone's behavior.
I'm starting to see his point.
Yeah.
Do you have another example of this?
Well, Carnegie talks about Abraham Lincoln's decision not to publicly criticize General George Meade after the Battle of Gettysburg.
Oh, okay.
Meade had made some tactical errors.
Yeah.
But Lincoln knew that criticizing him would only demoralize him and potentially harm the Union's war effort.
So instead of focusing on the mistakes, Lincoln chose to focus on the bigger picture and maintain a sense of unity and morale.
Precisely. It was a strategic move that prioritized the greater good over personal satisfaction or the need to be right.
That's a great example. It makes me wonder if Carnegie has any advice on what to do when we are criticized.
Oh, yeah.
How do we handle those situations?
He actually offers a very specific 4-step process for turning critics into friends.
Okay, I'm definitely interested in learning more about that. But first, let's take a quick break.
Okay, we're back and ready to learn how to turn critics into friends. This should be good.
Well, Carnegie's approach is all about diffusing tension and finding common ground.
Okay.
His first suggestion is surprisingly simple. Thank the person for their interest.
Even if their criticism feels harsh or unfair.
Yes. Remember, even negative feedback means someone is engaged enough to care.
Okay.
Then, acknowledge their viewpoint. You don't have to agree.
But show you're trying to understand where they're coming from.
That makes sense. It's about validating their feelings, even if you don't share their perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Find common ground. There's almost always some area of agreement. Yeah. Even in heated disagreements. Focus on that shared understanding.
So it's about shifting the focus from what divides us to what unites us.
Exactly. And finally, postpone action to allow for reflection.
Okay.
This gives everyone time to cool down, think things through, and maybe even come up with a better solution.
That sounds incredibly practical. Do you have an example of this in action?
Well, Carnegie himself used this approach when he received a furious letter from a woman who was upset about something he'd said on the radio.
Oh, wow.
Instead of getting defensive, he acknowledged her anger, expressed his own regret, and genuinely tried to see things from her side.
I'm impressed he could stay so calm in the face of such strong criticism. What was the outcome?
They actually ended up having a friendly conversation. And the woman even apologized for her initial tone.
That's a great example of how a little empathy can go a long way. Yeah. But let's shift gears a bit. Sometimes we need to persuade people to do things.
Right.
Even if they're not initially on board. What's Carnegie's take on that?
Well, he introduces this brilliant principle, arousing an eager want.
Okay.
It's about understanding what the other person wants,
right,
not just focusing on our own goals.
So it's kind of like putting ourselves in their shoes and figuring out what would motivate them?
Precisely. He tells a great story about how he negotiated a lower rent increase by focusing on the hotel manager's interests.
I'm intrigued. How did he do that?
Instead of complaining about his own financial situation, Carnegie talked about the pros and cons of the rent increase for the hotel itself.
Okay.
You know, he framed it as a business decision appealing to the manager's priorities.
So he shifted the focus away from his personal needs and presented it as a win-win situation.
Exactly. And by doing so, he achieved a mutually beneficial outcome.
That's a fantastic tactic. Do you have any other examples of this principle in action?
There's a story about a sales representative who was trying to sell life insurance.
Okay.
Instead of overwhelming the customer with policy details,
Yeah.
he focused on the benefits for the customer's family.
Okay.
He painted a picture of how the insurance would provide security and peace of mind.
So he tapped into the customer's emotional needs and desires rather than just focusing on the product itself.
Exactly. It's about understanding what truly motivates people and framing your message accordingly.
Okay, this is making me rethink my whole approach to persuasion. So we've got genuine interest,
Right.
remembering names, the art of listening, turning critics into friends, and arousing an eager want.
Right.
What else does Carnegie have in store for us?
Well, he dives into the delicate art of handling disagreements and arguments.
Oh.
And his advice might surprise you. You can't win an argument.
Hold on. How can that be true? Someone always comes out on top, right?
Well, Carnegie's point is that even if you win by logically dismantling someone's argument, you've probably lost something far more important, the relationship.
So it's like a Pyrrhic victory.
Exactly. He tells a story about a time he got into a heated argument at a dinner party.
Okay.
He was technically right, but the argument created tension and resentment.
Yeah.
He realized that proving his point wasn't worth damaging the relationship.
It reminds me of that saying, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
Carnegie would definitely choose happiness. He believes the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it altogether.
But what about when someone is blatantly wrong? Should we correct them?
Well, Carnegie says that directly contradicting someone will only make them defensive.
Okay.
Instead, he recommends asking questions rather than making statements.
Ooh, that's a clever strategy. It encourages them to think critically and potentially arrive at a different conclusion on their own right.
Exactly. It guides them towards your perspective without triggering their defenses.
Do you have an example of this in action?
Carnegie tells a story about a sales representative who was trying to convince a factory manager that his motors were running at an acceptable temperature.
Okay.
Instead of arguing, the salesman asked questions about the temperature standards set by a reputable industry association.
So he subtly led the manager to reconsider his assumptions by using facts and logic.
Precisely. It allowed the manager to save face and arrive at a new understanding without feeling like he'd been defeated in an argument.
I'm starting to see how powerful this approach can be. Are there any other strategies Carnegie recommends for handling disagreements gracefully?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of showing respect for the other person's opinions, even if you disagree. Instead of saying you're wrong, try something like, I understand why you feel that way, but...
It's about acknowledging their perspective before offering a different one. It feels so much less confrontational.
It is. And it creates a space for dialogue rather than debate. Carnegie also suggests starting any potentially contentious conversation in a friendly way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue with someone who's being nice.
Exactly. He uses a great analogy. A drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall.
I love that. So it's about persuasion, not force. Do you have an example of how this works in practice?
Well, Carnegie talks about a time he needed to secure a contract with a client who was known for being difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of being confrontational, he started by talking about the client's hobbies and interests.
Okay.
Building rapport before diving into business.
He found common ground and established a connection before getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. By creating a friendly atmosphere, he was able to win over the client and achieve his goal.
This is pure gold. I'm realizing that a lot of these principles are about setting the right tone and creating a positive dynamic in the interaction.
You're absolutely right. It's about creating a foundation of trust and goodwill.
Yeah.
Which makes it much easier to influence people in a positive way.
This is all so insightful. But before we dive into any more of Carnegie's wisdom, let's take a quick break to let these ideas sink in. We'll be back soon to explore even more techniques for building stronger relationships and achieving our goals. All right, we're back. I'm ready for more of Carnegie's insights.
Okay.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
I'm glad you're finding it valuable. Let's delve into one of Carnegie's most intriguing principles.
Okay.
Letting the other person save face.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah.
That sounds like it involves some serious tact and diplomacy.
It does. Carnegie emphasizes that everyone has an ego. and needs to feel respected even when they've messed up.
Right.
Publicly humiliating someone
Yeah.
only damages the relationship.
Right.
It makes it harder to work with them in the future.
So it's about finding ways to address issues without making the other person feel cornered or embarrassed?
Exactly. He shares a great example from General Electric,
Okay.
Charles Steinmetz.
Okay.
A brilliant but temperamental engineer wasn't working well as a department head.
Oh no, that sounds like a tricky situation. Did they just fire him?
Well, they knew he was too valuable to lose,
Yeah.
but his leadership wasn't working.
Right.
So they created a new title for him, consulting engineer, giving him similar responsibilities, but without the official leadership role.
That's brilliant. They solved the problem while allowing Steinmetz to maintain his dignity and expertise.
Right. And by letting him save face,
Yeah.
they preserved the relationship and kept a valuable asset on their team.
I'm starting to see how much damage we can unintentionally cause when we don't consider the other person's ego.
Yeah, it's easy to ride roughshod over people's feelings without realizing it.
Right.
Carnegie suggests a few simple strategies to avoid this.
I'm all ears. How could we get better at letting people save face?
Well, firstly, always criticize in private.
Okay.
Never reprimand someone in front of others.
Right.
It's humiliating and unproductive.
That's good advice. No one wants to feel like they're being put on the spot.
Yeah.
What else?
Focus on the behavior, not the person. Instead of saying you're lazy,
Yeah.
try, I noticed this report wasn't completed on time.
That feels so much less accusatory. It addresses the problem without attacking the individual.
Exactly. And lastly, try talking about your own mistakes
Okay.
before criticizing someone else.
I like that. It shows humility and makes you seem more relatable.
Yeah, it creates a sense of shared fallibility.
Mm-hmm.
When you're willing to admit your own shortcomings, it becomes easier for others to do the same.
This is all so helpful. It feels like we're shifting from techniques to a whole mindset of respect and understanding.
You've hit the nail on the head. Carnegie's principles aren't just about manipulating people.
Right.
They're about fostering genuine connection and collaboration.
Now, I'm curious about how Carnegie suggests we motivate people to take action. Any insights on that?
Well, he has a brilliant chapter titled Making People Glad to Do What You Want.
Okay.
It's not about coercion. It's about inspiring, willing cooperation.
Okay, that sounds less manipulative and more like a leadership skill.
Yeah.
How do we achieve that?
Well, one technique is to make the other person feel like they're doing you a favor.
Right.
Remember the story of Woodrow Wilson asking William Gibbs McAdoo to join his cabinet?
Yes. He framed it as a personal request,
Yeah.
making McAdoo feel valued and indispensable.
Exactly. It completely reframed the situation. Instead of simply offering a position,
Yeah.
he appealed to McAdoo's desire to be helpful.
So it's about appealing to people's better nature,
Right.
their desire to contribute and make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly effective. Carnegie shares another example of a sales representative who couldn't get a busy executive's attention.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Everyone's so busy these days. How did he break through?
Well, he finally got his foot in the door by saying, I'm not here to sell you anything. I've come to ask you to do me a favor.
Wow, that's reverse psychology at its finest. I bet that piqued the executive's curiosity.
It did. The executive invited him in, intrigued by the request for help,
Okay.
by making the executive feel like he was in control.
Yeah.
The salesman cleverly flipped the script.
This is all so insightful. I'm starting to realize how much psychology is involved in effective communication.
Yeah, Carnegie understood that human behavior is driven by complex motivations and desires.
So beyond making people feel valued and helpful, are there any other strategies for motivating action?
Well, Carnegie emphasizes making the task seem easy to accomplish.
Okay.
No one wants to feel overwhelmed or incapable.
Right. It's much easier to get started on something if you believe you can succeed.
Exactly. He tells a story about a man who was struggling with dance lessons.
Okay.
His first teacher was very critical,
Oh.
making him feel discouraged.
Ouch. I can imagine how demoralizing that would be.
He was ready to quit, but then he found another teacher
Okay.
who focused on his strengths and offered encouragement,
Yeah.
making him believe he could become a good dancer.
What a difference a supportive teacher can make. It's amazing how much our beliefs about ourselves can influence our actions.
Absolutely. And Carnegie's point is that we can all be that encouraging figure in our interactions.
Right.
Whether we're dealing with colleagues, friends, or family,
Yeah.
we can choose to focus on their potential rather than their flaws.
So it's about fostering a growth mindset, helping people believe they can improve and achieve their goals.
Precisely. It's about creating a supportive environment where people feel safe to experiment and learn without fear of judgment or failure.
I love that. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the power of genuine interest to the art of letting people save face and motivating action. Any final words of wisdom from Dale Carnegie before we wrap up?
Well, Carnegie's ultimate message is that success in life hinges on our ability to connect with others, understand their motivations, and inspire them to action.
Yeah.
His principles are timeless because they tap into fundamental human needs and desires.
It's amazing how relevant his insights remain,
Yeah.
even in our fast-paced digital world.
It's a testament to the enduring power of human connection.
Right.
While our communication methods may change, our core needs for validation, respect, and belonging remain constant.
So as we go forth into the world, armed with all of this amazing advice, what's the one key takeaway we should always keep in mind?
Well, Carnegie sums it up beautifully. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive.
Oh, I like that.
In other words, treat people with respect, kindness, and understanding, and you'll achieve far more than you ever could through force or manipulation.
That's such a powerful image. It's a reminder that building strong relationships is the foundation of a happy and successful life.
And that's the essence of Dale Carnegie's enduring wisdom.
This deep dive has been so insightful and inspiring. I feel equipped with a whole new set of tools for navigating my relationships and achieving my goals. So to our listener, what stands out to you from this deep dive? What principle are you most excited to try out in your own life? Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep diving deeper.